Master, sir? I heard Yoda talking about midichlorians. I've been wondering, what are midichlorians?
Audiences can sniff out bad exposition from miles away. All it takes is saying something both characters would know.
You graduated high school when you were 13, and this is what you're doing?
Or maybe calling your big brother Big Brother.
I'm on a roll, big brother.
Or maybe announcing a character's entire MO right out of the gates.
This is Katana. She's got my back. She can cut all you in half with one sword stroke, just like mowing the lawn. I would advise not getting killed by her. Her sword traps the souls of its victims.
Particularly in Act 1, even just overusing first names can feel unnatural to an audience.
Jack, this is exquisite work. Wow, you have a gift, Jack.
The next time you're hanging out with your friends, notice how rarely anyone begins a sentence with someone's first name.
Jack!
Oh, come
no!
on.
Jack! No! Wait, Jack! No, Jack, I couldn't possibly, Jack.
The problem with bad exposition is it breaks suture and pulls people out of the story. I made a companion video to this one called 9 Rules for Good Exposition, but since it's often easier to learn from mistakes, here are some clunky ways of getting out exposition that are often best avoided.
The Earth's EM field shields us from the solar winds, which are a lethal blend of radioactive particles and microwaves.
And lest anyone think that I'm dissing other writers in this video, every exposition mistake listed here is a mistake that I've made myself. I'm Jonathan Stokes, and this is Raising the Stakes, Essays About Story. Let's get into it.
Robert was your father's best friend, no?
And as you know, Bob, is when a character explains something that all the other characters would already know. Before streaming, TV audiences had an entire week between episodes to forget important plot points. So nervous studio executives would often make writers constantly remind viewers of basic information.
I don't remember all their names.
Here's my rule of thumb for how audiences detect bad exposition. Is a character saying something because the character needs to, or because the writer needs them to? This heuristic will always help you detect if you're writing bad exposition.
For 10 years, I have done the best I could to raise you.
Wouldn't all the characters know this? Or how about this?
Oh, what would Mom and Dad say?
I don't know. They're gone. They died when I was 3, remember?
Returning to Game of Thrones, here Obara Sand is asked a yes or no question. But instead of just answering, she explains her whole backstory to her own sisters, who presumably would already know it.
When I was a child, Oberyn came to take me to court. I'd never seen this man, and yet he called himself my father. My mother wept, said I was too young.
Okay, enough already. The As You Know Bobs are really a variation on... Why should two experts ever need to explain something to each other that they both know?
This is called a chalice.
And the chalice resembles a cup or vessel, or more importantly, the shape of a woman's...
Okay, Da Vinci Code maybe isn't fair. Here's a minor example from one of my all-time favorite movies, a movie I reference in nearly every video, Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade.
Let me tell you another bedtime story, Dr. Jones.
This example is not egregious, but I think it is clear to an audience member that Indy and Donovan are telling this story for the audience's sake, rather than their own.
Of the First Crusade, 3 brothers to be exact.
I've heard this one as well. 2 of these brothers walked out of the desert.
A variant on this is characters finishing each other's sentences. This often shows up in mystery shows when characters begin putting together clues. I think writers instinctively sense when they are explaining plot directly to the audience and try to mask it by having characters excitedly overlap their dialogue.
We're on a roll.
They have a fight.
About the affair.
About Philadelphia.
Things get heated.
And she turns her head.
He whacks her with something.
A pot.
Castle, at least, is self-aware about this and succeeds in being charming. But I guarantee you will find this expository device in every TV detective procedural.
So we find out who robbed him.
We find the third man.
They know they're finishing each other's sentences.
Tommy! Tommy, come on, you gotta see this.
You can channel surf for hours and never stumble across a piece of news reporting that's relevant to your life. Yet in movies, this sorcery seems commonplace. All disaster movies rely on newscasters.
Comets began far out in space. They're what's left over from the creation of the solar system.
But TV exposition shows up in all kinds of movies.
Accessing archive. Hydra was founded on the...
And now, TV exposition can even happen over a phone.
As the children became older, they became more difficult.
Okay, next. This may be a controversial take, but I think that more than half of all title cards are an unnecessary expository crutch. The Star Wars title crawl gets a pass from me because it sets a mood, is a nod to the classic films that inspired George Lucas, and features John Williams' incredible score. But isn't it worth considering whether Lucas truly needed to devote the first 2 minutes of screen time to give us this data dump? Does a brand new Star Wars viewer truly process all of this information before the movie begins? If an audience member walked into a theater in 1977 2 minutes late, wouldn't they still be able to follow the plot? A use of title cards I do find truly additive is Clint Eastwood's masterpiece, Unforgiven. The movie starts and finishes with these elegant bookends. It's a digestible amount of relevant information that sets up the language and period of the film. It's literary. Similar to title cards, I think at least half of all voiceover narration is a device for lazy exposition.
When others' minds would...
Hello, someone there?
As lampooned by Zach Helm's Stranger Than Fiction, if your narrator is a charming, disembodied, omniscient voice explaining the plot, lead character, and movements in time, you may have fallen into this trap.
Alright, who just said Harold just counted brushstrokes?
Don't believe me? I have a good script doctor friend who has been repeatedly hired by studios purely to write voiceover to explain the plots of movies after they score poorly in test screenings.
It's been half a century since the scavengers destroyed our moon.
Here's Oblivion, which I thoroughly enjoyed, starring the incomparable Tom Cruise.
Without the moon, the Earth was thrown into chaos.
But it begins with nearly 4 minutes of straight voiceover.
Tsunamis wiped out what remained.
If your voiceover character is actually one of the characters in the story, and there's a clear reason why they are narrating,
get busy living or get busy dying.
There's a stronger chance they are not just an expository shortcut.
That's goddamn right.
The Shawshank Redemption uses Morgan Freeman's voiceover to tell the story, which makes sense once his narration catches up to the present and he makes a character turn. If your voiceover character is not involved in your story's plot,
The dude abides.
then they better be extremely charming. Sam Elliott in The Big Lebowski is tricky to explain,
The dude abides.
but I'll allow it.
I don't know about you, but I take comfort in that.
Give him a minute, son. Good Cox needs to think about his entire life before he plays.
As a very general rule, anything in a story's past has no stakes. If your hero flashes back to a dangerous moment in their past, we know they survived. What really matters to an audience is the present timeline. Often, the only reason to flash back is for exposition.
The PIM particle is the most revolutionary science ever developed.
Remember in Bloodsport when Jean-Claude Van Damme spent so much time reflecting on his past that the editor keeps inserting the same shot of JCVD staring thoughtfully just to remind us that we're still in a flashback?
If you expect me to be punching bag, you can forget about our deal.
So if you must flash back, maybe do it in quick bursts to mimic human memory.
When we have finished with you, you will no longer be David Webb.
Don't do it for entire scenes, unless you're a genius like Quentin Tarantino or Aaron Sorkin. The main exceptions that spring to mind are movies told entirely in flashback, like Titanic or Forrest Gump, or movies that are about memory, like Memento or Usual Suspects.
I am Mr. Kobayashi.
Kobayashi.
Tell me.
In these movies, memory is the story, not just exposition. Oftentimes, a filmmaker realizes that flashbacks won't fit in the narrative language of their movie, so instead they insert backstory into a character's dream. This often doesn't ring true. I've been dreaming my entire life, and I don't know about you, but my dreams are often more like this than exact replays of key backstory from my past. Terminator, one of the great movies of all time by one of the greatest directors. Again, I'm not ever trying to be mean-spirited in these videos. I'd rather use great movies for examples than beat up on lesser movies. Like flashbacks, if your movie is about dreaming, like Inception or Nightmare on Elm Street, then dream sequences are fine. These dreams are not exposition, they are the plot. No matter what, if you do include a nightmare in your story, just don't have your character do that movie thing where they wake up like a jack-in-the-box. I hope these thoughts on exposition are helpful. And remember, these are just rules of thumb. Every rule of writing can be broken, brilliantly, especially if you're Quentin Tarantino.
I give the watch to you.